Okay, so we're here at the last class, last demonstration, and you've got 3 more paintings to work on. Everything's going to be due on Friday at 3 o'clock. I'll come in and I'll grade everyone's work. So if you'll put your work in this box sometime between now and 3 o'clock on Friday, I'll be able to get it. Be sure to have your name on it. That's really, really important, because if I don't know whose it is, I can't assign a grade. So make sure, like maybe over the calendar, you just write, big letters, your name, so I'm able to assign grade where it is. Also, one thing that I would do just to protect your grade is with your phone, just get a picture of every one of your assignments. That way, if something horrible happens in here, there's a fire, theft, whatever, you will be able to show me your digital images and I'll be able to give you credit. If your work mysteriously disappears in a lab book, there's no way I can grade it, and there's no way I can give you a fair grade. So you'll protect your grade by taking those pictures, okay? So if I show up and your work doesn't have a name on it, or the lab book is missing, I can't give you a passing grade. So protect your grade with a name, and go ahead and take a photograph of each one of them. Now remember, a passing assignment is 12 values. Now some of these, like this one, is going to be a few more than that, but I'll try to keep it simple for you. But at least in those very beginning, you have to have a minimum of 12 different values. So 3 for a floor, for a wall, and for an object. Okay. So even if you do kind of a weak job with it, I know you're learning, like at the gym. Say I can't get full 10 reps. Well, I know I'm improving because I'm in the gym doing something, right? So that's my attitude about how your work will go. Now, what I want to do today is I want to make the most of this time. And I'm not sure what is most beneficial for you, because I know some of you look really closely at what I'm doing, and some of you are just kind of hanging out in the class and you're listening, but I don't know that I'm using your time most effectively. So based on what I've done in the past, what works the best? What do you want to see today? What would you like to hear to prepare you for these paintings?
Sketching.
All right, so sketching help, okay, so there's that.
The demonstrations help.
Do the demonstrations help?
Yeah.
Okay, I feel I'm self-conscious, a little nervous that I'm just going on and it doesn't really help you, to be able to see it. So if that really does help, good, because I know you could also go to the video. So when you go to the website and see the things moving, that is really accurate. And you can also go back and forth. So it's like, no, that didn't make sense. Let me watch it one more time. That's how I teach myself. I'm building some things that I'm not going to take a class to do. I'm going to go online, go to YouTube, and find 30 versions of it. I scrub through it until I see, is this something worthwhile? And then I watch something, very closely. So, hey, good morning. 10 sheets of assignment. Okay. So it does help. Is there anything, I'm going to make I'm going to make 2 more videos. This video is already complete. But is there anything in the videos that would help you more? Okay. And if you think of something later, email it to me. Because I just have you looking down, and occasionally I have a side view of what's happening on the palette. But I'm starting to wonder even if that side view is that helpful. If just looking straight down and zooming in a couple times, maybe that's just as good. So this will help other students too. So if you are seeing anything that's confusing, let me know about it. I don't take offense to it. My job here is to help you, to teach you. So I'm open to your criticism. If you had any trouble with any of the earlier ones, I've got those examples up here. This is the first one that we did, and the block is there. So coming back to this should be the same as doing this painting plus doing the cloth. So today I'm not going to spend much time talking about everything else. I'm going to just talk about the cloth and what we'll be doing to get that material. And it's those materials that are important. So when you do a portrait, the way you treat a t-shirt or a scarf or a scarf in the hair or whatever is going to be what this material here is. And I chose a color that's pretty much the magenta straight out of the tube to make it easy. So where I want you to really spend time is seeing some different values on this, and I'll show you that. Then what I'll do is I'll go into the shiny metallic, and then the last one I'll do today is the glass. And again, most of these I'll be dealing with the focus and not so much all the walls. Okay, and I will say we are ramping up in complexity. So this one's just a little bit harder than our last one. See, we just did blue straight out of the tube, then we did a mix, then we did 2 objects. Now we're doing 2 objects, but one's a different material than metal than glass. So see how I'm kind of sneaky? I'm kind of giving you a couple more wheels on the bar each time. Also, don't forget the digital studies are important, and I don't have everybody's digital studies, so make sure you email me those. So email digital studies, take pictures of all of your work in your lab book. All lab books go in here by 3 o'clock on Friday. And I'll grade those Friday afternoon, and then Monday you can come back and pick them up. Make sure your name's in your lab book. So.
Digital studies is what?
Digital studies is one assignment? Yeah. And there's a demo for that. It's interesting, like everybody looked at the digital studies demo, it seems like, or a lot of people did, and then fewer and fewer people are looking as we go on. So it looks like you're able to just jump right into the painting. So, okay, so to make best use of our time today, I'm just going to jump into this first painting. And if you want to move, or if you want to get to a place where you can see a little bit better, that's good. I saw last time I put my camera right in front of where I put my brushes, so I want to not do that again. All right, and Gwen, you said you wanted more drawing help, so let's...
I was trying to do that, I don't know how many times I tried the vase with the block on top.
Right.
Yeah, I tried that a couple times last night, so when I got
Okay, well, if you've got...
pretty close.
If you have 3 values, if you have 3 values on the top, you're good. And but the idea is that we're just trying to see that one parallelogram of red plus green mixed together. And did you see on the website where there's a young man sleeping? It looks like he might have had a sister and a parent behind him.
That was sort of like a blue or something.
Yeah, so the blue shirt made his orange, shade of orange brown, made his brown skin look, to me, kind of dead and gray, like gunmetal gray. So that's why I have you do this assignment, so you're aware that complements make gray mixtures, and so to watch out for that, because you can have all this paint down, and then if you end up with gray, it may mess up what it is that you're working on. So, okay, so the drawing is pretty much the same as what we did with the achromatic. So I'm going to give myself a composition here, a rectangle, and I'm going to put my block in there. And I want to give myself enough room for this cloth that's in there, so I'm going to make that just a little bit smaller. And see, I'm just drawing right on top of my earlier drawing. That's fine. Then the wall comes to the floor, and then where the 2 walls meet in the background. So that's the body underneath the clothing, so to speak. That's the form underneath the cloth. And the cloth is almost like liquid. You see how it's like a waterfall? It flows and pours right over the object. So when you go to do the cloth, what you want to do is see that it's folded here. So there's one piece of cloth, and then there's a second piece of cloth that comes across, and then that cascades down. And then it puddles, or it has these sort of folds, comes into a kind of corner. And if yours looks more like a paper towel, if yours looks a little more stiff, like it has starch in it, just do the best you can. But what I want you to do is see what happens where it turns from light to shadow, and there are many, many value changes. So instead of having it just be like a block where there's a hard edge from light to dark, what's going to happen is that curve is going to have all of these different value changes as it goes across. And so that's what I want you to see. So all those different value changes are like the value changes that I have up here on the magnets. So they're going to be more like this. So instead of in the past where you might have found that you got this value, and that value in a block, now you're going to have all of these different values. Maybe not the white, but you're going to have all of these are going to be mixing up. So learning to use those is important. Okay, I'm going to draw in where a couple shadows are. So I'm going to focus mostly on the fabric today, and it's going to take quite a bit of magenta. So I'm going to have a group of 3 to start out with. Good morning. There's a attendance sheet there. Get that. So the easy thing is to look at what's your lightest areas and what are your darkest areas and what's your middle tone. Just like when we did the value scale on that one of those first days. Remember, it doesn't take much black to make a shadow. All right, so let's do the lightest values first. So where do you see the lightest values?
On top.
Right, just like with the block. So the block is kind of a key. Where you see shadow on the block, you'll probably see shadows in similar planes on the cloth. Where you see light on the block, you're going to see light on the cloth. Okay, so let's get some of those light values put down real quickly. Now, do I go too fast or is it about right? Okay, because what I want to do is I want to go really fast because it's the decisions that I make in blending these colors or mixing these colors that I think are most important. It's not really the application of it, so I'll try to not waste a whole lot of time with this. So I'm going to do kind of broad strokes where the tops are going to be painted, and I may come back and divide that value up again, making it a little darker, a little bit lighter. But it's almost like my basic big areas of light. I'm going to paint those first. The money, and I thought this would be the easy one, but it's on the website. I can email you the JPEG, yeah, this one isn't in the book, and so I think that's a change I'm going to make in the future, that I'm going to make sure I put it in there. But I'm just trying to figure out what you absolutely need, and you know, you have to pay for every page from this printer, so I thought that that would work. But I agree with you. I think it'd help to have that in there.
So you're gonna put this on the website, right?
It is already on the website,
Okay.
yeah. So the demo's already up, the image is already up, and but I could also email it to you if you prefer it that way. All right, so I'm looking at my basic lights and darks, and I think this is some of the light areas, and there may be more highlights than this, so I'm just going to try to all right, so these are the basic lights. Now I'm going to look for the basic shadows, and those are in the creases, right? Darkest areas I think are in the creases. So I don't want to mix this tint with the black, right? Because it'd come out gray. So I have to go back to an original out of the tube or mixed color, straight hue, and then mix that together. So set that down. And that was about 75 or 80% magenta and about 20 or 15% black. And you see, like from a distance, it almost looks black. You know, compare it to something that really is black, and it's not quite. But so this is going to be my deepest shadows. Now there's just a tiny line of it at the top. There's another tiny line of it coming down in that fold. There's a larger area of it in this fold. And then as this one folds under, there's probably a little bit underneath that, so I'm going to put some shadow there. There's also a place where the fabric is turning up a little bit, so I'm going to put some just underneath that. All right, so lights, darks are established. Now I'm going to be looking for my midtones. And even though this is kind of a shadow right in here that doesn't look really, really dark, it's already kind of a creamy cloth, so its local value is lighter than the magenta straight out of the tube. So just watch for that. In my demo, I think I made it just a little bit darker than it is. And if that's what you do, that's okay, but just if we're trying to talk about accuracy, I think that this is not straight out of the tube magenta, that's a little bit lighter than that. So I'll take a little bit of my light, move it over to the side. Now I'm going to add magenta to that, which will run it back towards the middle, run it back darker. Good morning. There's an attendance sheet that's just to the left of me. I think the young lady has it beside me. So I almost have everything painted in, but it's still not looking as varied as what's up there. So now I'm going to have to split some of these values. So I'm going to look for yet more lights, and I'm going to look for more dark. So I'm going to keep going back and forth. All right, so back to some lights. And again, it's going to be just like those tiles I have behind me on the magnet board. I'll probably have almost one of each of those colors. Metal is going to reflect color a lot, and so that's the big difference between this one and the next one I do. The metal is almost all the colors that are around it. This one is just the hue or the dye that's in the fabric itself. So I'm going to do the highlight on the top. Towards the bottom. Folds kind of squiggle a little bit at the bottom here. Good morning.
Good morning.
I think that there's an attendance sheet right over there. Oh, right in front. Thanks. And then what happens on the floor is you're going to want to put a cast shadow. It's really subtle, but that gray floor, you want to make it look like this isn't just paint stuck on the floor, but there's going to be a cast shadow underneath there. So I'm going to do an exaggerated version of it with the black, but there's going to be a little spot where that piece is going to draw some shadow out, and then on the floor there's going to be this cast shadow that's underneath it. So I could probably put one more dark value on here and give you the idea. But see, unlike the geometric shapes, there's not huge value changes. Okay, so this is an idea. Where we're getting, some of the light and the shadow that's up there. And what I want you to do is just know that cloth is different from these geometric shapes. Now, this is the demo version that I did, and you can see how much more contrast I had in it. And I think I have too much contrast. So the difference between the lights and the darks, I don't know that the shadows are that dark. So I think this was a little bit too intense, what's happening right in there. And I made that correction right here. So if that happens to you, all you have to do is just go right back over that, and you can change those values just a little bit more. But I think it was just a little bit too much black in those. So does that make sense? So it's just achromatic painting, just like this, but you're going to have this loose, organic shape of the fabric over the top of it. So that's that material, and that's that assignment. Okay, that's going to be on the website, and you can download that or look at that on your phone or whatever it is that you need. So I'll set up the next one. really is easy. And it will be easy if you can free your mind to follow my instructions. But if you try to fall back on cartoon-like notation, cartoon-like drawing, it's not going to be effective. So the non-painter, the non-artist sees metal and they say, oh, gray. And they mix up gray and they paint it gray. Or they see a shiny object and in cartoon language, that's 3 lines. Like you've seen in cartoons, there's a window and they have 3 diagonal lines on there to signify that. That's a kind of cartoon language, but that's not really what an illusionistic, naturalistic painter does. So what happens in here is we just have to get our drawing figured out. That's probably the hardest. But remember, if this turns out to look like a creamer or a huge flask or whatever it is, just as long as you've got it symmetrical, you know, round on one side, round on the other, however big the lip is, that's fine. But just do the best you can to get the drawing done. And there's a demo, so like when there's a demo back in the beginning, and you can scroll through there, and all the blue drawings up here, I show how to draw those. So you come back to this one. So once you have that done, it's super simple because we have the traditional primaries. We have yellow, blue, and red in here. And if you can see the floor and the wall, that's simple by now, right? Light yellow, light blue, red, dark red. And then those colors are present in the metal. And so you just have to paint them in the metal. Okay? So if you see my finger in the reflection, where my finger is on the floor, that's the color that goes where my finger is on the water pitcher. And it gets darker as it goes up the center of the pitcher because my finger is being reflected out here away from the center of the spotlight, right? So that's what is happening. Closer to the bottom, it's this lighter yellow. Higher up is this darker yellow. Now, the dark red that's on this side is this cast shadow. And so my finger reflected in there is going to be doing the same thing. And as it comes out, it's a little bit lighter because my finger's in the light red. And then as it gets further and further towards the center of the picture, it's getting slightly darker because my finger's getting further away from the light red. And the same with the blue over there. Every down plane is going to have yellow showing in it. Every right plane is going to have red showing in it. And every left plane is going to have red in it. Every right plane is going to have blue in it. So there'll be blue along this side, red along this side, yellow underneath, and so on. So on the foot of it, there's also going to be some red here. On the foot of it over here, there's also going to be some red. Now this one is important to figure out because later on, we're going to have reflection and translucency. So make sure you figure out how reflection works first. And that'll make this next one easier. Okay, so we'll get started on this one and I'll show you what to do. So I'm going to do a quick drawing. The easiest way when to start this is to do an egg or an oval first. And that's the body, that's what's going to be holding the water in the water pitcher. So if you can do an egg, you've got that made, right? You can draw a line lightly down through the center and make sure it's about the same distance left and right. I think I need to round this out just a little bit more on the bottom, and I think that would help. And not go quite so far out to the side. So, got the egg, okay? So the next thing is to put a foot on it. So if we just draw like it's a neck coming down and then another curve under here, that's the foot that keeps the water pitcher from turning over. And we want it to be curved at the bottom because it's a cylinder. We don't want it to be straight across. Then up here we flute out, curve out for where the handle and the spout will be. And so the spout turns down just a little bit, comes across, and the handle comes out quite a bit down and is welded to the base. And this demo drawings on our site, so if you need more help with that. Now, the whole name of the game is we're showing what reflective metal looks like when we do a painting. And reflective metal shows what's around it. So if you do a portrait of your aunt or your cousin and they've got a necklace on or a watch on and they have a red shirt, I will bet you $100 that that red's going to show up in their watch or in that necklace. So you have to look for that. It's not just putting yellow for gold or light gray to make it look like it's silver. That reflected color is really important. Okay, so here's the line coming in from the walls, and here's the line coming between the two walls here. And the name of the game with this one is to work with your paint while it's live, while it's active on your palette. Because if you have to mix it up twice, the chances of the colors being different is great. And I'll show you why that's important. So we'll start out with yellow because we don't have to mix anything with that. We're going to have to mix a blue, and we're going to have to mix a red. So let's do yellow because that's the easiest way to start. You automatically know from earlier assignments this yellow is going to have lighter and darker versions of it. And also you know it doesn't take very much black. I've already got some out there. It doesn't take very much black, and I'm just going to use a little bit of white to show those variations. So the majority of the yellow straight out of the tube is going to be this middle area, a little bit lighter, closer to the water pitcher, and then the shadow that the water pitcher is blocking light and creating. So I want to do my middle value first. Super easy, right? Okay, I'm going to do my tint next. We'll put a little yellow off to the side, and I'll do my. Okay, so here's an example. I didn't have my paintbrush clean enough, and there's a little bit of orange coming through here, and so I did that with my brush. I didn't mean for this to be a learning moment, but it is. Because I put my brush in there and not my palette knife, I sort of infected this mixture just a little bit. So should have stuck to my own rules. Always use your palette knife to do your mixtures because you never know what's in your paintbrush. All right, let's do this again. And then a little bit of yellow for my shadow. So the tint first. And I've got a pretty good eye, so even if you think there's almost no difference in these colors, I can see the difference. And one thing white does is it makes it more opaque, and so you end up not seeing the pencil lines underneath there. So there's my light version, and now for my shadow. So Bob Ross says happy trees, I say pepper flakes of black. You know, just little tiny amounts of black because it doesn't take much to change it. So I've got a tiny amount of black on there, and this is going to be what I begin for my shadow. Let's see how much it changes it. Go with this. This will be in the shadows. I'll do a full version of this demo and I'll take a little bit more care to get things as close to perfect as I can make them, or as close to perfect as we really need, because a painting doesn't have to be a photograph. It can be expressive, so it can vary a little bit from what the original looks like. All right, so do you all see I've got 3 values here? Now here's the most important thing. While those colors are live on your palette, you want to apply them into your water picture reflection. So that dark line that's going along the bottom of that water picture, all right, so there's a little bit of light, a little bit of the light. I think that's about got it. Okay, so now I'm a quarter of the way done, meaning that I've got the floor down. Next I'll do a wall, then I'll do the other wall, and then the last thing is that gray area in the middle. Okay, so let's do red next. I've already got some magenta out. And remember, red is magenta with a little bit of yellow. Scoop up all that magenta. Just a little bit more. Got some yellow still alive there, so I'm going to use that. See, I've done 2 demos in class, and I've done all of the paintings in class, and I still have paint left. And these are paints that I used in an earlier class, so you should be okay with your paint, but do kind of conserve it. As long as you've got something live on your palette, you can use that. A little bit more. Pretty close, just a little bit more yellow. All right, so I've got a red, and remember, we don't add white to red unless we absolutely have to. Usually the red you mix is going to be the light, and then we'll just darken it. And so where I see the light is just above the shadow on that wall. So I want to paint that in. It's got kind of a arcing shape to it. A lot of times what students will do is they'll put all their energy into the walls and the floor, and they'll kind of speed up with a water pitcher. But what I'd like for you to do is, if you have to skimp on anything, skimp on the walls and the floor, and try to really look at that water pitcher, because that's our goal. That's what you don't need to learn how to paint walls anymore, because you've already learned that. So make sure that you're really looking at that water pitcher the best you can. All right, so here's my basic value. And in the shadows, I kind of see two shadows. I see kind of a dark shadow and then just slightly darker. So those will be my 3 values I'm going to put on here. There's lots of little shines and reflections up above, but I don't think that the viewer is going to understand what those are. I see them, but I think they're going to look like scratches, or I don't think they're going to help the painting. So I'm just going to go for 2 values of the shadow. So remember, I'm going to keep a little bit of red with nothing in it, because I'm going to use that in the water pitcher. And then I'm going to take the other 2/3 and divide that up into 2 parts so I can have 2 shadows there, because I want to use all 3 of those in the water picture too. So a little bit of black. And then not quite so much black, because that was made it really dark for the other value. Sort of like in the inside of that, it seems like it's just a little bit darker, so I'm going to add a darker value. All right, so those are my 3 values on the wall, and now I'm going to look for where those are on the picture. And the darkest one, now you'll want to put a contour line around this. You're going to want to outline it because you're not going to like the fact that these colors kind of blend into each other, but that's really what happens. You don't see really hard lines everywhere on that water picture. A lot of times they sort of blend in. So I've got this sort of darkest shadow on the edge. It's also on the foot down below. Now, are you guys getting good enough at seeing that you can see that dark red right at the bottom there? I also see it on the spout. And one trick, if you're having a hard time doing details with your hand, is to put your pinky down and rest your hand on your pinky, and then you can just barely push down so the weight of your hand isn't there. There's also something called a maul stick, and you can use it like with a ruler or anything that kind of holds still, but my arm will act like the maul stick, but you just put that stick down off to the side, it comes across and you're holding it here, and then you rest against that maul stick, and then you can push against it like that. So those are some different ways you can do that. So I got my darkest red. I also have a little bit of red showing in the top part of this, and I have a little bit of red showing on this side of the handle. All right, now I want to go for my lighter versions.
So after you do the other wall, are you gonna paint that that base silver, or it's just gonna stay right like that?
Well, I'm going to paint everything in, but that's where I really want to change the way you think of things. I really want you to think of reflective metal not as gray, or if it's gold as yellow, or if it's brass as orange. I want you to think of it as reflecting whatever is around it. So if I were to stand up in front of it with my black shirt, you'd see my black shirt, and it's the black of my shirt that you see, not really the metal. Now, if I used something that was all scratched up, then you would see the gray. So let's say that hood on my lamp up above is not shiny. And so that does look like you see some of the metal in it because it's not reflective. But when it's reflective, it's going to show whatever's in there. So give me 1 second, I'll show that to you. So if I were to put something orange out in front of it, that gray would start to disappear. You see how now you're seeing orange?
Yes.
Yeah. Or I don't know if this is, if you can see over that enough. But whatever's in front of it, that's what's reflecting. So what it's reflecting is everything that's out here. So you've got some stripes, some like bluish gray stripes. Those are the windows. And then the ceiling, if you were to have to say what value that is, that's kind of a light gray. It's almost like the ceiling is this value right here, right? So it's not the metal that's showing up so much, it's the rest of the room that's being reflected. So if you think of it that way, it's going to be easier to paint, and it's also going to be more realistic. So, all right, so we got a wall, a floor. Oh, we have a little bit more of a light red in the middle here on this foot. And now we have the blue, and then we'll be 3/4 of the way finished. So the traditional blue is a ultramarine blue. Ultramarine means from across the water. Ultramarine is one of the most expensive minerals in the world. And if you've seen any traditional Christian imagery of, like, say, Mary holding Jesus, Mary has a blue robe on. She's always pictured in blue. The blue is not symbolic. The blue is a show of wealth, that Mary is so important that she would be wearing the most expensive robe there is, because lapis lazuli is what makes that ultramarine blue. And lapis lazuli is a semi-precious stone, and it's mined in Afghanistan, in the mountains of Afghanistan. So for a Renaissance painter to be able to get that blue, it used to be that was like looking at gold. That's more expensive than gold. So if you had your portrait made and you used that blue back, say, in the 1500s, you're showing your wealth. That's like showing up driving a Bentley. It's a status kind of thing. So what we have now is primary cyan is our one of our 3 primaries, but it used to be that they would have the ultramarine be a kind of primary. So, all right, so I'm going to mix this cyan and magenta together, and we're going to try to get a blue that's like that ultramarine blue. You don't want to go so far as it being a violet. And blue is a color that you can add white to it. So the darkest areas of the blue might be blue straight out of the tube. But because blue is so much darker than yellow, orange, and even red, you don't need to add black to it for your shadows. But in some places you would. But now I'm going to add a little bit of white to this to get that lightest area to the right of the handle. But if I mix this up and I find it's a little on the lavender side, I know I've got too much magenta in there, and I'm going to have to remix this. So. All right, so experience has paid off. I think this blue is about right. And this is the blue that would be the highlight, or the lighter area that's right there. add a little more blue to it to get my darker. And then my darkest blue closest to the wall, and I'm going to use blue straight out of the tube for that, or blue straight out of the mixture for that. Three values for that wall. And now with the paint slab, I'm going to paint it in where the blue exists on the picture. And so the farthest right edge is catching some of this highlight. So I'm going to be putting that in there. A little bit darker towards the center. And then on the foot, it's darkest along that edge. All right, so I pretty much have everything but now the grays. Probably 3/4 of the water picture is painted in, but I haven't used any gray at all. Right? Does that make sense? So So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this gray in here, and where I see some highlights, and those are generally either planes that are going straight up, reflecting the ceiling, or straight out, reflecting the room that's in there. So back to some of the achromatic ideas of just black and white. I'm going to take a middle value first, and that's the majority of the room that's sort of a gray. And again, it's gray because it's the room, not gray because it's metal. So like, there's a little area where we're all reflected, it looks like, and then the rest of it is more of a generic room gray. There's a little bit of gray on the top of this spout. It's the ceiling being reflected, as well as here. Then there's some darker grays that are like us and that black paper that's on the wall over there. And then there's some highlights. All right. Okay, so this is the idea where I've got the room, darks and lights, people, windows, all that reflected in there. So does that make sense? Okay, so don't outline, let just one value meet another value. And try to treat this area right in here as if it's a mirror reflecting the room, and don't think of it as gray at all. That's the same thing with this thick area along the bottom. That's reflecting the room. The handle ceiling that's coming up above that. So, okay, now the last one is admittedly the most difficult, but we're working up to that. So don't fear it. We use the same ideas of what we had before. Now we add just a twist to it, that we have translucency. So we have reflection, we have the local color of an object, we have translucency. So pretty much everything in your painting is going to be orange, violet, or green, or a tertiary mix of orange and violet, violet and green and orange. And those are all going to mix in the direction of feeling brownish, kind of a dirtier color, not a real nameable color. So, you know, red sage, you know, what color would that be? Well, that's sort of a reddish green. Well, that doesn't make any sense because those are complements. So just be aware that what happens is you're going to have comparisons between these. Now, I put the piece of pipe in there because that really helps you show what's going on. So the goal of this is to make it look like there's water in this glass vase. So there's a couple sort of key landmarks to look for. One is the top of the water. And those of you that have had chemistry, you know that's called the meniscus. Top of the water surface, when you're measuring, you look for where the meniscus is, right? So what a meniscus ends up doing in this case is it sucks the color down below up to it. So depending on where you are in the classroom, you may see it looks like there's an orange coin or an orange disc at the top of it. That's key to making it look like there's water in here. If you don't show that top of that water surface, it's just going to look like an empty base. So meniscus, find that. Okay. Also, what happens when you go from air into water, the water acts like a lens. And I don't know if you've ever been out, you know, with your friends or whatever, you're at a picnic, you're at a social gathering, you've got a glass of water in your hand, and you're sitting in the sun. Well, watch out, because I saw this happen to my friend. He was sitting there, and that water glass was acting like a magnifying lens. And he burned his leg because the sunlight that went through the water concentrated in a small area, and it was funny at first, but then it's like, wow, I don't want that to happen to somebody. So when you think of this as a lens can make something look bigger or smaller. So what you do is when you see that pipe going through, that pipe is going to change its shape just slightly. It gets just a little bit fatter as it goes through, and that's going to help the viewer know what it is you're doing. I'm painting water, right? So we have a meniscus, we have the lens of the water. And the other thing is, when I was a little kid, I learned this in Cub Scouts. There was this like riddle about finding a certain person and looking for the arrows point to where they're going. And what they did is they put the arrow behind a glass of water. So if you've ever looked at yourself eating cereal when you were a kid, you looked into the spoon. Everybody does that, right? You know, you use like funhouse mirrors. If you look at it in the concave area, it flips your head upside down. So the top of your head is at the bottom, your neck's at the top. If you look at it the convex side, then you're just kind of stretched out. What happens is that the water reverses what's behind it. So what you may see is that, say for where you are, you may see a little strip of violet on this side, and all of this in here is green. Or on this side, you may see a little bit of green right over here, and all the violet on this side. When you look at it in the book's got one view of it. So here's the green side, and here's the violet side. It has reversed what's behind it. So those three things together is going to make this look like water. Meniscus, lens, enlarging the pipe, and switching the colors left and right. Okay? So those are key to be looking for. All right, so I'm going to do my version of this. I'm going to try to make it happen quick enough that I don't bore you with it, but I'll show you some of the things that happen. And I won't do a full painting of this. Just like with the water pitcher, symmetry is going to make this work out. So it doesn't matter if yours is a vase like this or a vase like this, right? So it doesn't matter as long as it's symmetrical, because we'll be able to do the same things. So what I'm going to do is I see the body of the vase as a globe, as a sphere. So I'm going to make a circle there. And I see a triangle at the top where the base opens up, and then it kind of smooths its edges as it comes together. So I'm just going to connect it that way. And I'm going to doctor it just a little bit to make it symmetrical. And I want to be able to see in it just a little bit. And there's not a real pronounced foot on it. It's just a little bit of a area where I can kind of see how that goes. All right. Next thing I'm going to draw is the meniscus. It's just a little bit below what I'd call the waist of this. I'm going to put the pipe into it, and I'm going to shorten it just so it fits into my composition. And then the pipe doesn't go into the front edge or the back edge, it goes in the center. So if you remember like a straw in a to-go cup, the straw goes into that center hole right there. And so you want to make sure that you can see a little bit of the front of the meniscus, so it's going in the middle. And then we're going to enlarge it as it comes through. So I'm going to make it a little bit fatter. And then I'm going to look for the cast shadow. A little bit of a darker cast shadow down below. I've got my lines of the wall, my lines of the floor, and that's pretty much it. Okay? So the majority of the work is going to be seeing down planes, just like with the water pitcher, down planes that are catching orange, and translucency where we see through. So when we had the water pitcher, everything that's in orange is a down plane on this water pitcher. So you have to work a little harder to see it on the glass. But if I were to put another color in there, you would see it change. So where you're going to see yellow here, those are the down planes. So do you see that yellow? If I take that yellow away, so what happens when the yellow's in here is that yellow is going to mix with the green you see through it, and it's going to make a yellow-green. Or the yellow is going to mix with the violet you see through there, and you know complements make a gray, so there's going to be a grayish color. So we have to think about how the orange works and how the orange and the green works. So I'm going to abbreviate this, and I'm going to do little splotches of paint, and you'll be able to see how this works. So a little bit of magenta and a lot of yellow for your orange. I'm going to add magenta to the yellow rather than the other way around, because I can control it a little bit better. I don't need a whole lot of orange. And so I'm going to take a little bit at a time and add to the yellow. And whether you're working from the lab book or from life, all you have to do is just kind of compare that side by side. And to me, I'm close enough. That's good enough, okay? In the book, it looks like there's a little bit of white, and so the printing process is a little bit different than seeing it from life. So sometimes things are exaggerated. The camera will change it, the software the camera uses will change it, and then the printing process onto the paper may change it. So this may not look exactly like what's up there. But so here's where we're going to have a true orange. It's going to be in the floor. And it's going to be in the meniscus just a little bit because it's sucking up the color from the floor. Okay? So I'm going to just do a quick version so I don't take up all of your time. Then we're going to have a green. And I'm going to make this green as close to the same green as we see so I can prove my point. Green is blue and yellow.